Okay, everybody, it's my pleasure to welcome back my old friend Hanif Virani, who is going to tell us all about what's happening with AI, generative AI in particular, and how it's being used and potentially abused in the enterprise. Hanif is a longtime product leader and a company executive and a digital transformer, and he has deep experience in each, which he brings to today's presentation. So put it together for Hanif.
Thank you very much. And you'll see I dated this presentation as today's date because I suspect this information will be out of date next week. There's been a lot of change in this area, and especially over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of change. So we'll go for today, and if any of you guys have any new information that I don't have, please let me know. And please feel free to ask questions throughout if anything pops into your mind. I'll give you a little bit of background on me. Those are the companies I've worked for. I started off in the music industry, went through Web 1.0, ran an e-commerce company, worked for Yahoo, a big corporation, went back to a startup, did my own startup, worked for another large Vancouver-based content network, in banking, in tax, and most recently at BCAA, which is the Automobile Association. So it's a very varied career. Most of it, if not all of it, was in product management. The last few, and especially the last one, was a lot of digital transformation. And so I'm going to start off, but what is artificial intelligence? And I'm going to ask you guys, first of all, what you think artificial intelligence is. Anyone? Yep. It's a program with instructions that provides you with information. Yes. Anyone else? Yep. Yes, it takes prompts and tries to answer your prompts from a data source that it has and tries to answer your questions. That's about right? Yep. Anyone else? Well, let's ask the expert. ChatGPT. Artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science that focuses on creating systems and machines capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as learning, problem solving, and natural language understanding. And so we use AI in literally everything that we do today with technology. There's a very broad definition of AI. Some of the things that you guys might use, I am not going to say her name because then all of my devices will start to go off. But there's also Google and Alexa. And this is essentially, this is a bit of natural language processing. So it's basically taking an instruction or a request from you, translating it into code, and then doing what it is. And so, for instance, at my house, a lot of my lights are set up with my Apple devices. So I can walk in and say, open the garage door, or turn on these lights, or turn off those lights. I have a Google Home in my kitchen, mostly for photographs. I can say, favorite that photo, don't show that photo, forward that photo to a person. It tells me my calendar for the day because I use Google Calendar. I can say how long is it going to take me to get to SFU first thing in the morning, and it will tell me. So these are all almost algorithmic prompts. So it translates what I'm asking it into computer code, goes and fetches the information. Often that information is on its own network when it comes to Google or Apple or even Amazon, and then replies me the answer. Stuff that we use every day. Other things. I'm assuming many of you have iPhones. Face ID, that is artificial intelligence. That is an algorithm looking for facial recognition and then unlocking your phone. The camera piece, all the image stabilization, the color modification, the autofocus, that is all AI. The predictive text, the ducking predictive text, that is all AI as well. Social media feeds. What is coming when you're looking at Instagram, the next post, why you're seeing that post, that is all AI as well. That's, most of us understand that that's because it's someone I follow or someone who I follow that follows or someone who that would be interesting to me with similar likes and so on and so forth. TikTok posts, Facebook. Navigation. This is an interesting one. When I got here today, I said, okay, well, send me the best route. I live in West Van, from my house to SFU. It took a look at live traffic data and said, okay, there's 3 possible routes. Here's the one that I recommend. And that is AI. It's almost like it's thinking. But we don't necessarily consider all of those things AI because we start to understand how they work. And does anyone know when we start to understand how AI works, what we start to call it? Software. Because we understand it, it becomes software. And so that level of AI is very much software and algorithmic based. It's on a rudimentary level, if this, then that. If the traffic is busy here, then reroute to another way. If this person follows this person on Instagram, then put them next. Netflix is a great one. If you've watched these shows and similar shows, suggest shows that other people that have watched those that also watched. It's pretty rudimentary. In my research for this, I started a little while ago, and there was a book I read called The Coming Wave. And it started to talk about a few things. And in 2017, there was a company that Google had acquired called DeepMind. And they created a piece of software called AlphaZero. Now, AlphaZero was originally created to play chess. And what they did was they wanted to play against what was the incumbent best chess program out there, which was called Stockfish. Now, Stockfish was a normal algorithmic-based AI. So it was trained by probably millions of lines of code. If this, then else, then this. If this, then that. DeepMind, however, changed that a little bit. But I'm going to let Cleo Abrams explain it to you because she does it much better than I do.
To understand why you're seeing so many mind-blowing AI tools all of a sudden, you need to understand how they actually work. And to do that, we need to play some chess. This isn't one of those, oh my god, AI beats a person kind of games. In this game, neither of the players are human. One is a famous chess engine, a system programmed by humans with insanely complex rules for how to play the game. The other is using a very different strategy, and that second player absolutely crushed the first.
It had learned the game without any of those rules. It just watched enough games to see what winning looked like.
That is Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google and chairman of its parent company, Alphabet. Yeah. He was chairman of the company when they created that second player, AlphaZero.
Before that moment, all of the game playing was done algorithmically. Move here, evaluate this, do the math that.
But that's not how AlphaZero worked.
It didn't understand the principles of what a rook and a pawn and so forth and so on. It just knew how to play because it had observed enough games and it learned how to win.
In other words, our best systems had gone from using human-given rules to win to using observation to win.
So you can think of that as moving from algorithms to learning. That to me was a major, major deal.
This ability to learn changed everything. It's what makes incredible tools like ChatGPT possible today.
And so we went from algorithms to learning. And there was other things along the way there. So that wasn't the absolute single inflection point that went from algorithms to learning systems. That was just one of the things that happened. And the reason why it happened was they started to use a type of computing called neural networks. And neural networks take in data, they train themselves to recognize the patterns in that data, and then predict the outputs for a new set of similar data. With AlphaZero, they trained it in 9 hours. In 9 hours, it went from knowing nothing about chess to beating the best software that was there the day before. 9 hours of training. This was the piece that sort of blew DeepMind's mind, so to speak, in that they could train using this neural network a piece of software to be intelligent without any other prompts other than, here is a bunch of people playing chess, we want you to win, in 9 hours to be the best chess player essentially in the world. That was huge. And so when we talk about neural networks, that's the sort of things that we're going towards now in AI. I also want to cover a few other terms here just so we can start to sort of have this conversation. Natural language processing, computer vision, multimodal learning, and generative AI. And I'm going to start off with generative AI. And how many of you guys know the difference between generative AI and general AI? Because those two terms are often used in media. So generative AI is again a branch of artificial, I asked the expert, as you can see, a branch of artificial intelligence that uses advanced algorithms to autonomously produce new and diverse content, ranging from text and images to music and more. By learning patterns from extensive data sets, generative AI models can creatively generate outputs, demonstrating a form of machine-driven creativity. General AI is something that I'm not going to get too much into, but that is where it surpasses this level of intelligence and goes to full-on smarter than human and almost cogniscient. It's aware of its own existence. We're not there yet, although not publicly yet. That's coming later on. And so generative AI is what when we talk about ChatGPT, when we talk about Google Bard, all these other things, that is generative AI. It's trained on a specific set of data. In order for generative AI to work, we have to have natural language processing. And natural language processing, NLP, is a field of artificial intelligence that focuses on the interconnection between computers and human language. It involves the development of algorithms and models to enable machines to understand, interpret, and generate human-like text, facilitating communication between computers and users in a way that resembles natural conversation. And so, just like the algorithmic piece, and when we talk to my phone, it starts to understand what it is that I'm saying and transforms that into a language that the computer will understand. In the reverse, when the computer comes out with an answer, it has its answer in its own sort of language and then converts it to English, my language, that I would understand. To do this, it uses what's called large language models, or LLMs. LLMs are advanced artificial intelligence systems that use deep learning techniques, specifically transformers, to understand and generate human-like text. These models, such as OpenAI's ChatGPT-3, are trained on vast amounts of diverse data, enabling them to perform a wide range of natural language processing tasks, from language translation to content creation. How many of you guys have ever used Google Translate? Yeah, that has used a large language model. That uses all of this generative AI technology for it to work, both in the visual sense, when it recognizes the image and the text, and in the verbal sense, so when you use audio communication with it. These large language models, this is what the world is talking about. But essentially, they're pretty simple. You take a chunk of the internet, and this one is on Meta's Llama 2. So Meta's Llama 2 dataset is one of the few open source datasets. Any of you right now could download the dataset onto your computer with a little bit of C code, about 500 lines of C code, and create your own essential ChatGPT that you could then go in and start to modify the dataset to tune it to get the answers that you want for certain things. And so that is revolutionary in itself. But the way it works is it scrapes the internet. And 10 terabytes of text, I believe, is about 4 billion pages of written copy. And so what it does is it goes out to the internet, it looks at everything, Wikipedia, it looks at PDFs, it looks at scientific articles, and gathers it in a big chunk. And then it starts to process that data in order to make it into a data set. And there's a technology called GPUs. I'm not going to get too much into it, but essentially it comes from video games, and it stood for Graphics Processing Unit. And things like PlayStations were one of the first ones to massively use GPUs. And the difference between CPUs, which what were current normal computers used to use, and GPUs, CPUs start to do things sequentially. So they're very good at doing things one after another, after another, after another. GPUs are able to take massive amounts of data and computation and do them in parallel all at the same time. So for large language models, it significantly sped up the processing of those large language models. That Meta's Llama 2, that 10 terabytes of information goes down to 140 gigabytes, which you can now download to use yourself. And the way the neural networks work is so I had an argument with my wife last night, not an argument, just a discussion about it, and sort of said, well, you know, is this intelligent or not? The way the neural networks work is they use all of that information to predict the next word in the sequence of words that it's doing. So cat sat on a mat was the 97% likely next word to be put there. And it does this every single time you ask it a prompt. And so the neural networks are interesting because we'll get into a little bit later, but nobody really quite understands how they work. We have a very good idea. We understand that you know, when you say mat, we can tell the computer, yes, this is correct. This is the sort of thing that we want. The way it goes out and when it searches the internet, the theory is that it's picking up certain words that are key indicators and leaving some of the other ones. So this is about the inventor of the Barbie doll, and it picks up certain things that are relevant to it and then makes assumptions on the rest. The neural networks, however, don't operate the same way. I think one of you said databases earlier. They don't operate the same way that a normal database works. So this one went quite viral a while ago. And it was asked the GPT, who is Tom Cruise's mother? Mary Lee Pfeiffer. However, if you ask the GPT, who is Mary Lee Pfeiffer's son, it doesn't know. Because there wasn't enough references for Mary Lee Pfeiffer going back to Tom Cruise for it to make that assumption. But there was a ton of references about Tom Cruise, so it biased that name, Tom Cruise, so it learned more about Tom Cruise. And so these are the sort of things that we're starting to understand about these large language models. And we're starting to understand in ways that when we then train them, we will be able to sort of make better content. This one sort of blew my mind, because for me, it's like I've worked with databases all my life, and that is a very, very, you know, it's the data goes two ways. Who's the son? There's the son. You know the son? Well, then you obviously know who the mother is, because you have all that data. But the large language models didn't work like that. And so this is from Andrej Karpathy, and I will actually, I'll send this presentation, we can send it out. For those of you who are very technically inclined, he does a very, very good, it's about an hour-long description about how large language models work. And this is a slide that is from his presentation, and it actually says, little is known in full detail. This is the guy that originally was at OpenAI. I think he got his master's in computer science from UBC, then went to head Tesla's autonomous driving division, and then recently went back to OpenAI. And he's still saying, and that presentation is not even a week old, he still doesn't know how they work properly. And so some of the players in the market today, the one that I use most often is ChatGPT. I tried to sign up for ChatGPT Plus. Some of you may have known that they just did a developer day a couple, maybe 2.5 weeks ago now, where they announced a bunch of new features. I, of course, didn't, I was like, oh, that's $20 a month. I want that. I, of course, didn't jump on it the first day. There's been such huge demand that there's now a waiting list for ChatGPT Plus. And so this is their only revenue source from consumers, and there's a massive waiting list. Bing also, Microsoft, which made believe a $10 billion investment in ChatGPT. A lot of the Bing search results use ChatGPT. And so use ChatGPT 3.5 for public. And then ChatGPT also has an image GPT called DALL-E, and Bing uses that. So if you actually have a Microsoft account, you can go to bing.create.com and log in, and you can start to make images. A couple of the other ones, Anthropic's Claude. Now, I would love to tell you more about Anthropic's Claude, but because I am in Canada, I am unable to use Anthropic's Claude. I think almost every other country in the world has access to it, but we do not. Same thing with Google Bard. So Google Bard, less countries have access to it, but because I'm Canadian, even though everything I do is on Google, I'm a paid member, it will not let me use it. Meta, like I said before, Llama 2, I didn't want to download the big data set and start writing C code because I haven't written C code in a very long time, and so I left that one alone. So ChatGPT is really what it is. And so those are some of the key things that drive these chatbots, essentially. That's the technology that drives them. There's some new technology called computer vision. And computer vision is the field of artificial intelligence that empowers machines to interpret and analyze visual information from the world, enabling tasks such as image recognition, object detection, and scene understanding. It involves the development of algorithms and models that allow computers to see and comprehend images and videos in a manner akin to human vision. There's a story about Tesla. So Tesla's original self-driving was done in the old way, and in fact still the ones that are out in cars today are algorithmic based. And so what they would do is they would go through and basically tell the system to say, if you encounter this, you do this, if this happens, if this happens. About a year and a half ago, Tesla decided to try neural network training. And Elon Musk wasn't totally sold on it, but they threw a bunch of money at it as they do. And they said, okay, well, we're getting all this video data from our cars. I have a Tesla. I have said, yes, you can absolutely take my driving data. It's all anonymized. And what they did was they said, well, let's take these frames and throw it at a neural network and see what happens. In the first 2 iterations, the neural network output was better than the algorithmic output. It learned faster than humans could code. And now they're looking to move forward with that. So the self-driving that comes out probably in the next 6 to 12 months will be done from neural networks, and the results are phenomenal. The network is able to teach itself much faster than we can write code to teach it. And this is something that's just been like phenomenal in terms of the way we understand how computers and AI works. And again, still back to, we don't totally understand how the neural network works, so it will come up with things that we don't know how it got there, but as it gets trained, as the humans say, yes, this is good, no, this is bad, this is mediocre, it gets better and better and better and better. And then the last one, in terms of technology that we'll cover, is multimodal learning. Multimodal learning involves the integration of information from diverse sources or modalities, such as text, image, and audio, to enhance the performance of machine learning models. By leveraging multiple types of data, these models can capture richer representations of the underlying patterns and relationships in complex data sets. So, with images, with this recording, if we were to feed this into a neural network, by giving it the video of me talking, the audio of me talking and giving it the slides, it will be able to process the data and understand it better than if you just gave it the text. If we CC'd all my text and threw it at it. It will learn faster. And so this is now what we're learning with AI systems, that this multimodal way of learning is again another game changer in terms of the speed and accuracy in which we learn. And so what can I do with AI now? And I was surprised because there was a study that I came across, and it came out in March of this year. And again, I will include it with the slides. There was a company that did research with 1,000 marketing professionals around the world from companies of all sizes, a lot of them large corporations and some of them startups and small businesses. And it basically asked them, how many of you use AI in your marketing activity? And the result was 73%. So 73% of marketing professionals use some level of AI in their jobs now. And whether that is known to their employer or unknown to their employer is still to be determined. And so my wife is in marketing. And I can tell you that her ability to go through copy and suggest edits and make things better has significantly improved with ChatGPT. She can get it from her copywriters and say, I don't really like it, I want to make it a little bit more warm or a little bit more funny. Throw it at ChatGPT and with those prompts and get a version back that is very, very good. With a little human editing, becomes even better than what the copywriters that she's paid to do gives them. And so talking to some other marketing professionals I know, some of my more recent companies, some of them are using it for email copy. And so when you're doing either just generic marketing emails or new product launches, or even service interruption notices, or when I was at BCAA, I ran the Evo technical team for a bit, and we had some outages. And so when we emailed people, we would give them the reason why or what was going on. What I'm finding now is those marketing people tasked with that copy are starting to use AI to generate that copy because it's faster, it's easier, it basically is a bit of a shortcut to get them to things. Social media copy, this one blew my mind as well. And so there's a lot of marketers that are now running their social media copy through AI for tone. Because what we're doing is when we start to get heated and when we start to have to put out information very quickly, we're not always aware of our tone. And as Andrew said in the last one, that social media post and that tone needs to follow with your brand values. And so you can actually prompt the AIs to say, well, these are my brand values. Is my tone on this X post or is my tone on this Facebook reply acceptable? And it will tell you. And often it finds things that you didn't even know in that tone. And so the marketer can make adjustments. SEO content, this is fantastic. In my early career, I worked a lot with SEO and there was a lot of humans where you had to say, get these keywords in, ensure that it's this length, so on and so on and so forth. Now just chuck it at ChatGPT and it does a very, very good job of that SEO content. Blog posts and copy, I am not the best writer, I will admit. So I will generally tend to write shorter things and I can throw it at ChatGPT and say, make this longer in this tone, and it does an amazing job. I was talking to Andrew last night, and actually maybe we'll do this a little bit later. How many of you actually use ChatGPT regularly? Yeah, so there was a prompt that I was doing yesterday, and I just said, write me a short story about a woman giving away baby shoes. And the result was unbelievable. You should try it. I tried it actually 2 more times after I spoke to you, Andrew, and it wrote different stories with different plot lines with the exact same prompt. And so it's getting a lot better in that ability to sort of take a story and add to it. Marketing and sales collateral copy. This is great because I was always the worst. I did work in a time where we actually had to do paper marketing collateral. And my copy would either be too short or too long because it had to physically fit in a space. You can now tell ChatGPT to say, I only want 2 sentences, summarize this. And it does a very, very good job. There's other ways that marketers are using AI and sort of user-generated AI. And how many of you have ever seen this Heinz ad? So what Heinz did, and this was done by a local ad agency in Vancouver actually called Rethink, they asked people to prompt AI and DALL-E 2 specifically to create versions of ketchup. And Heinz's thing was even the AI knows that ketchup is Heinz. So they did an ad about it too. I thought that was pretty cool. And so this is the first time that I've ever seen a brand go out to the public and say, use AI to interact with me and play with me a little bit. And it was interesting. I don't know how well it did, but I thought the campaign was super interesting. And I think Rethink even won an award for it. And so, and I was talking to Andrew last night, and I remember I was saying about the people that were doing hotels, and they were coming up with a new concept for a luxury hotel that was affordable. And it was actually a paper that you sent me, and I couldn't remember where we got it from. And so Leslie Richard is a marketing director for Landon Hotels, a boutique hotel chain that prides itself on an outstanding customer service. They're planning to open a lavish but budget-friendly resort in Italy, and we're looking for inspiration for the decor. And the prompt they used was this: a young couple on a romantic getaway, seated in a room on 2 colorful chairs with geometric designs. Between them is a small antique wooden table. Behind the table is an arrangement of flowers. We only see their backs as they are facing a window that overlooks the Mediterranean. Now, in the article, they didn't actually have the results of that, and I don't know why. So I fired it into DALL-E 2 on Bing. And within about a minute, this is what it created. These are original pieces of art, essentially, or images that it created specifically for me that I am now able to do whatever I want with. And the detail is fantastic. The geometric shapes are amazing. It's not perfect. And so what I think what the prompt said was the flowers behind them. I'd argue that the flowers probably not best placed there. I would argue, I don't know, I've been to the Med a few times. I don't know anybody else. I'm not sure the Med has jutting mountains like that. That is sort of spot on. That's kind of interesting. And that was the 4th one. And those were done as conversation starters. So when the product team or the marketing team or whoever it is starting to talk about these business concepts, they can visualize them for people in a way that we've never been able to before. That prompt, if I was to read that out in a boardroom, everybody would be like, what? If I'm showing them these pictures, all of a sudden they're starting to get things. And so this is also where I started to notice a little bit of the bias that has been talked about in AI. And so anybody else, I don't know how well you can see this, but anybody notice anything about these couples? They're very similar.
The three of them, it looks like the same guy.
They're also all Caucasian. It might be a little hard to tell on that screen, but I was like, hold on a sec. Why does young couple equal Caucasian couple if they're in this sort of an environment? This is start of the stuff that you have to be careful for when you're using AI for this sort of content generation. Just be aware of it. I ran the same prompt through again because I didn't like the flowers, and I just took out the piece about the flowers. 1 out of the 4 images were arguably not Caucasian, like the couple was not Caucasian. And so it's trying, it needs to get a little bit better. We need to start to understand why that is, what data sets it was going through to understand it. But just sort of if you are aware of this stuff, start to have a look at it. So that's for image generation. And so one of the other things actually is what I'll do is as a product manager, and no matter what my role in a company is or whether I'm contracting out for people, no matter what my title is, I always consider myself a product manager. And one of my fundamental beliefs in product management is that my idea plus your idea plus other people's idea generates better ideas. And so sometimes when I was working on this presentation, actually, I didn't have a team of people around me that I get to bounce ideas off of. So I started asking ChatGPT things. And it was giving me back answers that then made me think and made me look at it from a different angle and sort of acted as not as good as a team of people that I normally have around me, but actually pretty good for a first line. And I think in future what I will do before, and if any of you ever meet the people I work with, they will, attest to the fact that sometimes I have some wacky ideas, and sometimes I'll go out of left field, out of nowhere. I might start to put some of my ideas through AI and waiting for ChatGPT-4 to see what it comes back with first before I then sort of hone them down and take them to my bigger group. It's a way to sort of bat things around when I'm by myself. And if those of you who haven't, you should download the ChatGPT iPhone app. It is also very good for that sort of stuff. One of the other places in my career that AI is starting to be used is in CRM. So I was actually at Dreamforce last year when they were going forward with their Einstein CRM AI. And what this is supposed to do is when an agent is talking to a customer, or when an agent that's in person or on the phone or even in chat, what Einstein will do is surface all of their old communications. It'll start to listen to both what the customer is saying and what you're saying and start to give you a sentiment and a tone meter and say, hey, look, customer's getting angry. You're also getting angry. Tone it down. It's also in the future supposed to be able to go through a lot of that customer data and surface the things that the customer's talking to you about much faster than you can surface it. Now, what I will say, and especially as someone who has worked on this system, because of the amount of data that you need and those large data sets that we went over earlier, it's very difficult for legacy organizations to actually pull the data together in a way that Einstein can access it, make sense of it, and attribute it to that call. It's very, very difficult. If you were starting a business today, I would say absolutely do not even think about using anything other than Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics because they also have this capability. But when you're in legacy organizations, or if you ever work with legacy organizations, their systems are disparate and old. And often the customer data is in multiple different places. And so it becomes difficult to tie these systems together. I have seen Lenny Kravitz at Dreamforce, and they preach about how easy and code-free and no code, very little time. That is correct if all of your data is in their environment. If your data is not in their environment, it becomes very, very difficult to move it and get it to be consumed. So, but we are getting there. And so some of the new startups, their data is in a very, very nice format and on one platform, whether it's Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever it is, they are able to start leveraging these things, and their customer service is a lot more efficient. That ability to understand who the customer is before you even pick up the phone, the ability to route that call if the customer is had a very, very difficult issue and it's a major issue that is very complex, it might get routed to, might not even get routed to you, might get routed to a more senior agent who has more experience in those sort of complex issues. That is a much better customer experience, and that is something that we all want to get to. But just be cognizant of the fact that data is very, very, very difficult to tie together. And so I also wanted to talk a little bit about the future of AI. And this is when I started to get my first what we call hallucination. And so when AI doesn't necessarily return the information you want, or it doesn't make any sense to you, they refer to it in computer science as the AI is hallucinating. And so my prompt, I gave the prompt in, an image representing the future of humanity with AI. Include the text, what will the future do? That text came back very, very odd. And it was interesting to me. We could get into the psychology of how it created that image and what we'll think about that later. But one of the other ones, which I originally thought was good, still messed up the text. And so what I did was I used the trusty PowerPoint designer, and it was fine. And so what will the future hold? I mentioned that book earlier, and it's by Mustafa Suleyman, and I have to say the audiobook, he narrates the audiobook. It's very, very good. It is very technical, very deep. It will sort of challenge you in ways of thinking that you probably haven't thought of before. It will explain what the risks are. And again, with AI, in my last presentations, I would refer to books that were 10 years old. This is, I think it was released in August of this year. So it's still very, very new. It's very, very current. And it went through something that I had to re-listen to about 4 times. And he talks about how AI may be more profound than fire. Other people, like I think it's Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai from Google, says it will be more profound than fire and electricity. And at first pass, I thought, okay, fire was very profound for us as it gave heat, it gave warmth, we could cook our food. But Suleyman goes into more detail about, from an evolutionary point of view, how important fire was us as humans. And this is an image of a skull before fire. And what it meant was, because we didn't cook our food, we had to chew our food more. So whether that was meat and protein or plants, we spent a good part of our time chewing our food until we discovered fire and the ability to cook food. Well, what that did to us on an evolutionary scale was it reduced the size of our jaw and increased the skull where our brain would go. So it actually, that technological evolution of discovering fire and using fire to cook allowed us to get bigger brains. And what they're saying is that AI is going to have that sort of profound effect on us. It just absolutely blew my mind in ways that I didn't really think was going to happen. So we don't know how this is going to work. We don't know what's going to happen. We simply don't know how AI will interact with us, how much we will use it. We can estimate about things. I think within 3 to 5 years, we will probably all have our own personal AI agents that live on our devices, that help us do things, administrative tasks like take notes. things like reminders for birthdays of friends and to send this to that person and to buy this person a card. That will all be taken care of us in a very short space of time. What that does to us on an evolutionary scale, we still don't know. And so I kind of wanted to leave you with that sort of clangor of a thought because that was the one that resonated with me. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens to us as we evolve through AI and where we decide to use it more and more. And that is me. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Hanif? Tony?
Very, very good question. Theoretically, no, because it's an original work of art that was created for you, and you have the license to use it. However, the technology is so new that it hasn't been tested yet in court. And so nobody's gone, maybe someone will, somebody sees that Heinz ad and says, actually, that is similar to mine, and we will start a new cycle of understanding where we are in terms of the legality. And because what I said before is that we don't really understand how neural networks work because the amount of information that goes into them is so vast that we don't understand how it makes the connections to what it does. We might have to figure that out for courts. And I don't know what the courts are going to say. I don't know what sort of copyright challenges are going to come. But right now, you're allowed to, unless you get sued, and then you can't. Again, a lot of the stuff with AI, the answer is going to be, we don't know. Yep. So there's deep fakes, and so with this, with a lot of this generative AI, you can feed it, and Andrew and I were just talking about this in the break. You can feed, if you feed it enough information, it will be able to replicate someone. So I think the most famous one is Barack Obama put one out, which was actually a deep fake of himself, and it spoke like him, it looked like him. For all intents and purposes, it was him, but it was a deep fake. And so what I think they're trying to legislate against is doing that. And what Andrew and I were talking about is potentially, as we get better at understanding how the data sets work, you could potentially use smaller data sets. And so Barack Obama, there is a ton of video data on Barack Obama. It's probably relatively easy to create a deep fake. My daughter, for instance, there's not a ton of data on the internet about my daughter, but if they get the models right with the little information they could, you could potentially do a deep fake of my daughter giving me a call saying, I need to get some money. Now the flip side to that is as the AIs get better, we assume that there will be the defensive technology of that put into our devices as well. And so just like spam filters, we will start to get filters that start to take out some of this other fake content or manipulative content. But right now it's still, again, like how do you write a law for something that you don't really totally understand how the technology works? Yep. So the purpose of that law wasn't necessarily to regulate AI, it was to protect media owners and content creators. And it was essentially to ensure that they got paid. I think an unintended consequence was the blockage of Google for Bard, and I'm not quite sure why, because Google hasn't said why Bard is blocked from Canada. Because from my understanding, Bard is like ChatGPT, and when it outputs work to you, it's an original piece of work. And so I think it might be more punitive, or just Google saying, we're not sure how this law is going to land and where it's going to go, so we're going to, Canada's a market size that is important, but let's just, there's other things we can do first. If you're very into governance, you should check out that book. Yeah. I don't know. And I think we spoke about this yesterday as well. As I do digital transformation and sometimes called business transformation. I make my money because people have a hard time with change. What I know is that it will change. How it will change, I don't know. Whether you will be the generation that gets affected adversely during that change, I don't know. It's possible. But what I will say, if we look at history, I think it was the beginning of the 19th century. I think it was something like 97% of the population of North America, their jobs involved agriculture, the production of food or some sort of agricultural endeavor. Now it's like less than 1%. And so, yes, that was a long time, but we see these shifts. And we see these things changing. We see teachers being augmented by technology that makes them more efficient, that allows them to do their jobs better, but there's a factor of change in there. As a product manager, for me personally, I'm not necessarily worried about it for the next little bit. It's something that, again, I would keep my eye on, but I'm not losing sleep about it yet. As the world needs less of something else, it creates something new that it needs more of, and we generally tend to fall into those gaps. Yep. So I did some work, some actual work where I got paid for this. The reception for automated CRM, the hesitancy comes from the responses that the customers got, and that when you're a customer and you feel like you're getting the runaround, it feels even worse when it's not a person that is giving you that runaround. And I think for the most part, and again, like I say, this stuff is changing so quickly. ChatGPT 3.5 was significantly better than ChatGPT 3, and so on and so on and so forth. ChatGPT 4, although I haven't been able to play with it yet, is supposed to be even better. I suspect if we use the technology that ChatGPT, even 3.5 is on right now, and put out chatbots for customers with the right data sets, I think you'd find a shift in some of that. However, from my own experience, corporations are always looking to use it as a way to save money. So we're getting an influx of customer requests for things. It takes this many humans. Can we throw an automated process or a computer at it to then mean that we have less humans? Sometimes the methods that we have in there actually need human involvement. They do right now. And so I did some work for a banking client that essentially wanted to use a chatbot so customers could interact with it to find out their balance and pay bills and so on and so on and so forth. And I sort of did myself out of some consulting work because I sort of sat down with them and said, hey, well, let's look at the way your customers do this now. And they told me, well, some of them come into the branches and with their little old slips and play through the ATMs. And I said, okay, there's a very small amount of those customers. The rest of them right now are either going online to your website or using your app. How many complaints are you getting from them, and how much of that are you looking to improve? Because they're able to do that sort of thing now in a very efficient way. And to chat with a chatbot may not be the best way for them to do that. And so what we found was a lot of people trying to shove chatbots into a human interaction where we already had something that worked very, very well. Like, my banking app works really, really well. I can pay a bill in no time. I don't need to have a natural language processing chatbot behind it for me to tell it to pay my bill. It's easier for me to just use the app. So I think part of it was also businesses trying to find where the delta was to insert this technology to help their customers. And like any new technology, a lot of us got it wrong. And so I think that's where it's coming. I think you'll see a shift. With Einstein, what Salesforce was very good at is it was a human aid to begin with. So it would start to search for the customer information that the human could search for, but it just took longer. And so it would start to pull that information faster and allow the human to have a more relaxed conversation because they're not trying to do two things at once. The system is doing that. Where I think CRM is going and where I think it will be, and again, in a very short piece of space of time, I think we're going to get to the space where if you look at like a product company that sells physical things like Aritzia, let's say, Aritzia should be able to tie their customer data into their their new product information and then say, hey, I have got this new piece of clothing. I'm going to have, let's say for argument's sake, 100,000 units of this piece of clothing come in. Go find 100,000 people that want to buy this right away. And what it will do is look at the customer data that it has, look at their buying history, look at any other information it can glean and say, here is 120,000 people that we think we will market to, and of which we think you will move these 100,000 units of clothing very quickly. I think that's where we're going to get to with CRM. Now, there's two sides to that as well, and that is I'm of the opinion that that's pretty interesting for me as a customer because I'm delivering value to you in a very timely manner. There's other people that feel that that's an intrusion of my data and my privacy that you're using to sell to me. I don't know where we're going to land on that, but I think that's where it's going to go.
I just add to that if you are interested in where natural language processing and chatbots are going and how sophisticated they're becoming, check out a company called Core.ai. That's Kore.ai. I was recently in a presentation that the CEO gave, and the level of sophistication, the level of humanity, if you will, that is coming to natural language processing chatbots now is astonishing. And one of the things that he talked about was the scalability that the use of these new chat and emerging chatbots will give an organization. You can imagine you have customers from around the world. They're on different time zones and they speak different languages. It is really hard. It's an unscalable problem if you think about providing enough call center agents or enough customer success representatives to be available 24/7 in all the different languages that your users might speak. But you can do that with natural language processing chatbots, and they are getting so good in multiple languages that they're hard to figure out whether you're talking to a machine or a person. So check it out if you're interested in that particular field. A couple of things that I wanted to introduce into the conversation are this relating to what we are talking about in the class here. And that is, on the one hand, one of the things that's still really, really hard to do is to do customer discovery to figure out the innermost needs, fears, hopes, aspirations, and desires of a customer that you want to sell to. So we spend a lot of time in this course doing customer discovery and talking about design thinking, questioning techniques, and so on. I wonder whether soon, with the amount of data that's available, AI will be able to dispense with that process, and you can say, you can program it to say, I want a new piece of apparel that's going to appeal to as many customers as possible, for example. And on the one hand, will that result in an immediate commercial hit? But on the other hand, will that average everything out? So you're going to end up with everyone looking the same because AI is prescribing what we should be doing. And you were talking about jobs that will remain in the hands of human people. I think that if AI does start to average everything out, there's always going to be that unicorn idea that comes along, and the most creative people will always be able to reset things, like disrupt the data in a way that will allow businesses and companies to stand out.
I think it was the other presentation I did for you on digital transformation. I went over a concept that we're now in an era of humanity where answers are plentiful. The answers to almost any question is out there. what becomes the finite resource is the actual question itself. And so all of a sudden, you know, even in the 60s and the 50s and the 70s, to be able to answer a question was the thing that made you money. We're changing now to be able to ask a question. And so what I would say, so I did a startup, it was called Co-Parently. It was a calendar and communication tool for divorced parents. When we were doing the customer research for that at at alpha stage, we spoke to 100 different divorced or separating couples. There is nothing I know of right now where I could get the same level of information that I could from talking to those 100 couples through AI right now. But that is because I don't know how to ask the right questions. And it's easier to have a conversation with a human than start to figure out the prompts to type in and trial and error. Do I think that will change? I do think that will change. I don't know when the delta is going to be where we stop talking to people. There are some very, very interesting models out there. So there's a company, it's a authoring company that basically used crowdsourced authoring to write books. And what it found was the bigger the crowd, the more refinement it got, the better the hit of the book it was. I think that AIs will do that sort of thing much better. But
we'll end up all looking at the same content.
Will we?
It'll all be really good, but I presume it'll all end up looking reasonably similar in terms of the images it creates, the blog posts it creates, the content. I don't know what all this means, but Max, if you're creative, there's going to be work for you. Learn how to prompt this stuff, but never stop thinking differently about ways that it could be done, because the data is inherently looking backwards at the average of all of our existence and all of our experience.
Yep. My test for whenever I'm interviewing for to hire someone as a product manager, especially a junior product manager, I'm looking for the person who will be in any situation and is trying to make it better, has had a slightly off experience and said, how do I try to make it better? So I was at Target with my kids in Bellingham, and their queuing system was driving me nuts. And so it was like, I was constantly thinking, well, how could they make this better? That's what we're looking for in product managers, is how am I going to make this better? Take a look at a large set of data, know what your customers want, understand what they need, and try to find it and create it. And there'll always be work. I think you've stumbled onto another topic that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's dichotomies. As we go forward with technology, there's always, and in business in general, and leadership in general, and product management, there is always a dichotomy. And that is the dichotomy for what you've just said is, how do we support the independent artists, but still do it in a cost-effective manner where we can still get our work done? I don't know. That's something that on an individual basis, if you've got the budget and if part of your value proposition is to do right by individual artists, then I would suggest you don't use AI. If you are a scrappy startup that needs to get to that, wants to do that, but has to build a product first and you have to sell it, maybe that's the time to use AI. I know with the Screen Actors Guild and the writers, AI was a large part of that that conflict. And I think all the major studios have basically signed on to say, we will not use AI of an artist's likeness to fill in the blanks of scenes and things like that. And so that's one thing that they've done to commit. What I can see happening though is AI creating not a likeness of Barbie or Brad Pitt or whoever, but a new independent image of a human and starting to use them. And so these are all things that we're gonna need to figure out. And I'm sorry, like a lot of this stuff, I don't know. So I don't think it is inauthentic anymore. And so I would encourage you to go to the current version of ChatGPT and type in a prompt that says, write a short story about a woman giving away baby shoes, and see what it comes up with. It is mind-blowing. And so I actually think our storytelling is going to be better, because back to my fundamental product management belief of the more people that get involved with an idea, the better it gets, because you get to take the best bits out of everyone and put it together. AI is just another tool that will give us another perspective on some of the best ideas.
I'd like to weigh on that, because I'm a huge advocate for authenticity. If you have an origin story, in your life or in your business, or about a product, an idea, you have to tell that story. You can't outsource the generation of an origin story. You can, people do. I hear these sorts of ads all the time, or, at the beginning of a YouTube video, there's this thing that, so-and-so developed such and such, and you think to yourself, come on, that's ridiculous. I don't believe that. But they have the ring of inauthenticity to them. If you want, I suppose you can use AI to enhance the way you write it. You may have a great story, but you may be a terrible writer. So you can prompt it to generate a narrative around your story with the appropriate prompts. But never give up your origin story, because people will detect the ring of inauthenticity.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with startup pitches, right? I've run my own startup, I've done funding pitches for other startups. They always get better. People like Andrew, if I can bring him a pitch and I can say, I'm really excited about this pit, and he's like, I think the people who you're pitching to are going to be more excited about this. I would highlight that more. And that sort of feedback is going to be very important. And I think that's also where AI will be able to help in the future. I think it's going to be like multimodal. I think we will develop strategies and ways of working where we use the AI and we use our network of humans to gain a better product overall. Yes, that is exactly. It's basically trying to reverse engineer. There's also ways of some of those ChatGPT detectors has a better handle on the writing styles that come out and the content. So essentially, if you were to, submit a paper to Andrew and it was all done through ChatGPT, the data that you're trying to put into it, and the outcome that you're looking to get. Those detectors will then look at the stuff in between and say, is it likely that this person got there, or is it probable that the ChatGPT created this? What I will also say is sometimes those detectors are fallible too, right? So sometimes they make false positives. So they will look at someone's writing and say, no, this is GPT. I actually think a lot of those detectors will start to detect more false positives as time goes on, because I think we will start to learn to write like the AIs write, so which makes it a little bit harder.
All right, I think we're probably at the end of our talk. I'd just like to say thanks to Hanif for a very kind of thought-provoking conversation about what's happening. Of course, if we had you back in 6 months, the story would be different, but use this stuff, almost all of you are anyway, but in terms of generating copy, responses to customers, anticipating customers' issues, helping you to service customers better. If you want to write a book, it's all about the prompts. It's not about slaving away, trying to overcome writer's block anymore. Let's use this stuff, but let's be mindful that in a way it might dumb us down if we don't stay in control of it and control the creative process and control the narrative that we want it to explore. But it is there for us to use, and it's being used on us, so we should be aware of it and be users of it. So thank you so much for provoking some thinking. So
thank you for your interest.
Thank you.